Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Great, thank you. And Ms. Boulay, are you ready?
I am ready.
And is it Ms. Kunkel who's handling things today? If so,
Yes,
are
it
you ready?
is. Yes,
Okay,
I am. Thanks.
great. We are on the record in the Colorado Public Utilities Commission's proceeding numbers 24G-0084TO, 24G-0314TO, 24G-0439TO, and 24G-0440TO, and finally 24G-0441TO. My name is Connor Farley. I'm the administrative law judge assigned to these proceedings. It is approximately 1:30 p.m. on December 12th, 2024, and this remote joint pre-hearing conference is being webcast. This remote joint pre-hearing conference was scheduled and decision numbers are 24-0859-I, R24-0860-I, R24-0861-I, R24-0862-I, and R24-0863-I, all of which were dated November 25th, 2024. My apologies to Ms. Boulay for hopefully not moving too quickly through all those numbers. Let's go ahead and take appearances, starting with staff.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Assistant Attorney General Justin Cox with the Colorado Attorney General's Office on behalf of trial staff of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm joined by my colleagues, Assistant Attorneys General Jennifer Hayden and Aileen Chong. I believe we also have Lloyd Swint here from staff.
Okay, thank you for that. And welcome to all of you. Let me turn to the respondents for appearances.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Katia Allen de Oliveira on behalf of respondents Sergio Cornejo and MNS Towing.
Thank you very much, and welcome to you as well. All right, I want to cover a few things here today. As I stated in those decisions scheduling this remote joint pre-hearing conference, one issue I want to address is consolidation of all of these proceedings. Specifically in those decisions scheduling today's proceeding, I asked everybody to be prepared to give me your position and any argument as necessary on the issue of consolidation. I'll state at the outset that my very strong inclination is to consolidate all of these proceedings for efficiency purposes, and I think it's permissible under Rule 1402 of the Commission's Rules of Practice and Procedure. But I'd like to hear from the parties on that. So I'll start with staff. Mr. Cox, are you going to be handling things today?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me staff's position.
Sure. And just for a little background, staff counsel did confer with respondents counsel last week, and we did discuss consolidation, and we can correct me if I'm wrong, but both parties do support consolidation of the 5 proceedings.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Cox. I'll turn to Ms. Oliveira, and just for confirmation or anything else you'd like to tell me.
That's accurate, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I am going to consolidate these 5 proceedings. I'm going to be issuing, as you all know, an interim written decision. I'm required to memorialize all my decisions in writing. So in that interim decision, I will go ahead and consolidate these proceedings. So before we get into scheduling, and I am aware that the first of the proceedings has been scheduled, and there's a hearing scheduled, I believe, for January 8th and 9th of 2025 in that proceeding. So I'm aware of that, and we're going to have to deal with that in scheduling the consolidated proceedings. But first, let me just make sure that I understand what's going on in these proceedings and who the respondents are. In a previous pre-hearing conference that we held in 24G-0084TO, I had posed the question as to who staff was seeking to impose liability on. What came out of that exchange was that staff in at least that proceeding was seeking to impose liability personally on Mr. Conejo. And we had discussed the way that CPAN had been pled, which was Sergio Conejo doing business as MNS Towing LLC. Let me just ask you, Mr. Cox, have I stated that correctly?
Yes, that's correct regarding that proceeding.
Okay, so we have 3 of the remaining 4 proceedings that were pled the same way. In other words, they were pled against Sergio Conejo doing business as MNS Towing LLC. Those proceedings are 24G-0339TO, 24G-0440TO, and 24G-0441TO. So I'm assuming the answer, Mr. Cox, that you gave me in the previous pre-hearing conference applies to these 3 other CPANs that I just identified on the record and that are pled exactly the same as in 24G-0084TO. Is my assumption correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you're seeking to impose personal liability on Mr. Conejo in those proceedings. Okay. The one remaining proceeding was pled differently. That proceeding is 24G-0314TO, and it's pled against MNS Towing LLC. So, Mr. Cox, I'll just ask you, as it states on its face, it looks like you're seeking to impose liability on the corporate entity, specifically MNS Towing LLC.
Your Honor, this is another item we did discuss with Respondents' Counsel, and to facilitate the consolidation and make everything consistent, we did indicate that we would move to amend that CPAN to reflect the respondent as Sergio Cornejo, DBA, MNS Towing LLC, same as the other proceedings.
Okay. All right. Understood. Okay. Did you discuss a deadline or time by which staff would do that?
No, we were hoping we could do it orally here today, but obviously if you would prefer us to do it in writing, we can do that quickly.
Yeah, I prefer you to do it in writing just so it doesn't get lost. So to have it formally in writing in the record would be preferable. So why don't you get that done? Well, you tell me, could you get it done by tomorrow?
Yes, we could have it done by tomorrow.
Okay, great. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now let's move on to scheduling. And let me just tell you where I'm coming from on this. First of all, that I believe it was scheduled as a hybrid hearing in the first of the proceedings that is currently scheduled for January 8th through 9th. I believe those are the dates. In any event, whatever those dates are, that hearing will be vacated. so that we can schedule the consolidated proceeding. So
And Your
by
Honor,
my count,
before we get into that discussion about scheduling, I just want to give you background on our referral.
okay,
You know, obviously there was the existing procedural schedules in the two matters. We had agreed that those should be vacated. And we agreed to request that the January 8th hearing be converted into a pre-hearing conference, with the intent that we would provide progress on settlement discussions, um, and then establish a procedural schedule at that date if needed. But settlement discussions have somewhat begun.
okay. So the party's joint wish is not to schedule the consolidated proceedings today, but to give time for the parties to continue and perhaps conclude any settlement discussions and then get back together on January 8th.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. That sounds reasonable under the circumstances and given the number of counts and the amount at issue here. So I'm willing to accommodate that request. I will tell you on January 8th, I think it would be highly unlikely that I would entertain any request to basically continue the stay. What you're basically asking for is kind of a stay of the proceeding. Absent, really compelling reasons why a continued stay should happen for purposes of settlement discussions, I'd be disinclined to do that. I just want to let you all know that. So take the, approximately a month that I'm going to be giving you to address potential settlement. Use your time wisely and hopefully come to a resolution at that time. And I'll just tell you that, I found it the best motivator of settlement quite often is just getting a schedule in place. So that will be my inclination on January 8th when we get back together. I just want you all to know that up front, and not think that, this case will be stayed indefinitely. So well, that is all that I wanted to handle. That knocked out an awful lot of what I wanted to handle here today. So, and so I'm assuming that you haven't termed it a stay, but that's effectively what it is. And if I'm right, then you don't want deadlines for disclosure of witnesses and exhibits. Am I right about that? I'll start with you, Mr. Cox.
Correct. The intent would be that if we, had not wrapped things up with the settlement by the pre-hearing conference date in January, then we would set a procedural schedule that would include all those deadlines.
Okay. And Ms. Oliveira, I'll ask you just to make sure and get your answer on the record that Mr. Cox has accurately represented what you and your clients want.
Yes, Your Honor, I agree with his statements.
Okay. All right. So the path from here is I'm going to issue a written interim decision consolidating the proceeding, vacating the procedural schedule, In the first case, 24G-0084TO, vacating the hybrid hearing that's been scheduled and converting at least the first day into a remote pre-hearing conference for us all to get back together and for you to let me know where things stand and for us to figure out where things go from there. Does anybody have anything further for me to address here today? I'll start with you, Mr. Cox.
Nothing further. I just wanted to clarify that both the procedural schedules in 24G-0084TO and 24G-0314TO would be vacated.
And they will be. Thank you for correcting my oversight on that.
Nothing further from staff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Cox. And Ms. Oliveira, is there anything further from you?
No, thank you.
Okay. Well, let me thank you all and wish you a good holiday season, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.